I was going to start with intros, but I guess just to set the stage a little bit about the conversation we're going to have today. I've been in and out of this room, and there's sort of a recurring theme around place-based innovation that keeps coming up, and that's largely because Newlab's model is deeply rooted in the idea of place-based innovation and using public-private partnerships as a mechanism to align local leverage that can help startups commercialize faster. We built that model here at the Navy Yard. Largely inspired by a vision that this man set forth many years ago. So we're going to talk a lot about what New York is doing as a city to drive place-based innovation at scale, specifically in the context of climate and capturing green economy growth. So I'm going to let the panelists quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of zoom out and talk about some context-setting questions, and then we're going to go deep on what each of these panelists is doing individually.
Great, good morning. It's great to be here. Always fun to be back at the Navy Yard.
You don't know what time of day
wow,
it
it's
is.
been a long day. Well, yeah, well, since you raised that, I will say, this is for those of you who are around government, this is a highly unusual day, but I would say, and I can't speak for my colleagues, but I suspect they would say the same, it has been very much business as usual, and that means getting really good stuff done for New Yorkers. So my day included a review of plans for what will be the largest mass timber building on the North Shore of Staten Island, reviewing proposals for the Climate Innovation Hub that we're going to build and could have some themes from what I learned here at the Navy Yard at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. It included a review of our incoming founder fellows, diverse entrepreneurs that are going to do extraordinary work in bringing more equity to the tech and climate tech and life sciences ecosystem in New York City. So I am Andrew Kimball. I'm President and CEO of EDC, and I'm really delighted to be here.
Thank you, Andrew. Just a regular Thursday with some, footnotes. I am the President and CEO here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Lindsay, Greene.
Hi, everybody. I'm Clare Newman, and I'm the president and CEO of the Trust for Governor's Island. And it sounds like my day replicated Andrew's, because I started with a review of the largest commercial mass timber building that will be built on Governor's Island at the offices of SOM. So all climate all the time.
Amazing. Okay, so let's start with the Navy Yard since we're here, and it was sort of something that you nurtured and grew for a very long time. So talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, at the highest level, your philosophy about place-based innovation and how that was, formed or evolved during your time leading the Navy Yard, and then how potentially you're applying some of those learnings to what we'll talk about mostly today, which is the Harbor Climate Collaborative.
Awesome. I would say a few things about the Navy Yard. One is just the amazing consistency of strong executive leadership and board leadership from the leader before I arrived, to the leader after I arrived, to now Lindsay, to Clare being here at one point as COO, an incredible series of really visionary leaders, having a very big canvas to paint on, really willing to take risks, because in the economic development space, you want to create as much competition as possible, and then you've got to take a leap of faith. And frankly, this building and what Newlab is doing here was a big leap of faith. There were a couple board members who came from more of a banking background who almost tossed me out of the room when I first talked about this idea. But fortunately, I had enough credibility at that point that they let us dig in. And it's also being willing to work with your tenants as they evolve their project. So the day one vision for what the tenancies would be at Newlab aren't exactly what has evolved. It was more of a university-based partnership concept, and now you walk the hallways and you see the incredible innovation here, and just the energy in this place is awesome. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, New York City really turned its back on its waterfront in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s. We lost 750,000 manufacturing jobs. In the 90s, that began to change under Bloomberg with refocusing on bringing green space and housing to the waterfront, but not really a jobs vision, with one exception, the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And that has become a model in so many ways for what we are doing with the mayor's vision for the harbor of the future and blue highways, getting goods off of the tens of thousands of trucks that come from New Jersey across the Verrazzano and the GW and foul our streets, kill our economy. We are going to move those goods by water in the future, and you may have seen recently the initiative we're undertaking at the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. We're going to create a new, modern, all-electric port focused on blue highway initiatives, and we actually just won on Friday a $163 million grant from the federal government, a true endorsement of that vision. So, yeah, those are some of the things I learned.
Very cool. Okay, one more level setting question, and then I'd love everyone to sort of speak individually about what they're doing. Talk about the Harbor Climate Collaborative, and maybe even zooming out one more rung. Talk a little bit about the Climate Action Plan, if you don't mind, the Green Economy Plan, at the highest level to set context, and then zoom into Harbor Climate Collaborative and the role that plays against the plan. And then we can talk about the individual roles of each specific site in that vision.
Great. You want me to start?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay. Quickly, lots of cities now have had plans to battle climate change. New York City, that started with Plan NYC under Bloomberg. There was an update under de Blasio. There was an update under Adams. Really good pieces of public policy. But no city that we can track has had something like the Green Economy Action Plan that actually focuses on the economic development opportunities, the billions and billions of dollars that can be leveraged by embracing the green economy of the future, the opportunities around equity for entrepreneurship, the opportunities around workforce development. And so the Green Economy Action Plan, I really encourage you to look at it. It's pretty dense, but it is amazing and identifies 20 some odd sectors, 60 plus initiatives, one of which is the Harbor Climate Collaborative, one of which is the Blue Highways, one of which is the Harbor of the Future. But on the Harbor Climate Collaborative, what it says is you have this really unique synergy between the Brooklyn Army Terminal and the Climate Innovation Hub we're going to build there, the Climate Exchange that Clare has been visionary putting together on Governor's Island, and the amazing work that Lindsay is doing here with a master plan to double the size of the Navy Yard. And you have 3 campuses, 600 acres, 10 million square feet of space, the sites that were pivotal in really saving the world from our last existential crisis, World War I and World War II, and can be instrumental in saving us from today's existential crisis, which is climate change, through piloting, through collaboration, through just being in constant communication about what our tenants are doing, or our collaborators, our university partners. How can they benefit, not just on the one site they're on, but on all the sites. All of them, by the way, happen to be connected by NYC Ferry that we run. So that's a quick overview.
Love that. So this to me is what New York is doing better than anyone else in the world, and that is leveraging natural assets and physical infrastructure as platforms for workforce development, for piloting. So Lindsay, maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing on those 2 fronts at the Navy Yard.
So picking up on some of the things that Andrew said, the Navy Yard has been able to benefit from being first to get some of that early investment in the 2000s, and it took a long time just to get it back to where it could function. This building, I think when I toured as a young banker, and this building didn't have a roof. You could vaguely see that, it was the ghost of what it could be, but you could have, run a stampede of elephants through it and they wouldn't have broken anything. And so to come from that to this is a heck of a lot of money and a heck of a lot of sweat equity, because it's, like the jambalaya of financing. There's like 5 different types of federal money in it, and city money, and somebody's foundation, and somebody else's individually wealthy person who cares. You need that all the time to do the work that we do. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind, that we do have to be we have to hustle for the resources and put them together. And we did that with the intention that, yes, you need to have the businesses and you really need to build the ecosystem, but it has to be for the benefit of New Yorkers and all the companies that are here. If they aren't able to hire people, then they won't really be able to grow and be successful. And, founders will move here and, they may get a particular chemical engineer from someplace, but you need your everyday workforce once you start to grow to come from where you are. And so we have to invest locally to make sure the talent here is able to keep up with those jobs. And so we've always had an on-site employment center that connects people from, first and foremost, the immediate neighborhood, and particularly the public housing projects that are around us, and then other neighborhoods in Brooklyn and just the city. And we keep a relationship with the businesses to know what it is they need and translate that into a job seeker who may not understand whatever it is that business is doing. And that has evolved to saying everyone making something uses a computer numerically controlled fill-in-the-blank machine. Now we train people on CNC operation and programming. And then we said, we're doing something for adults, but we need to be able to influence the next generation of people the first time they go through the education system, not sort of fixing what they didn't get later. And so we created the Brooklyn STEAM Center, which is a next generation technical high school. And it's got 5 pathways. It's got culinary, which is, sort of traditional. It's got IT, and they do everything from cybersecurity to full stack development, to networking, and then there's a design and engineering pathway, there's a media pathway, and there's a construction pathway. And all of those are evolving all the time because they have business advisory councils, many of whom are tenants here, that are telling them this is the future of your industry. Learn this machine, but also learn this software. And now if you're in construction, you need to learn about laminated timber, but you still need to know how to use a saw and all these different things.
Amazing. And can you talk a little bit about Yard Labs?
Sure. So one of the things that we've done here at the Navy Yard for quite some time is pilot, which is to say, because it's a former government, particularly a military campus, it has a gated perimeter, so it's a safe space to try things out that may not always work well, right? Like if you have a robot that is learning how to walk, you don't want to dump that in the middle of Union Square. That's not that. I feel bad for the robot mostly in that scenario. But this is a place for you to test devices and technology. Our sort of most famous pilot is that City Bike had their first docking stations here where they learned how it worked. Did it plug into the power grid the right way? What do the bikes work on the potholes and all those sorts of things? We have plenty of potholes here at the Navy Yard. We maintain our own roads, and so because we have all this infrastructure, streets, buildings dating from the 1800s to the last 7 years, you can just test a variety of things as a physical space. We formalized that and then partnered with Governor's Island and EDC and other places to say you can pilot at all of these places. And so we share lessons learned. We help sort of refer pilots to different campuses so that they get the best experience they need. Governor's Island usually can more easily allow water-based testing than we can because we have working maritime folks. Like you can't just drop a robot in the water next to the functioning dry dock. Like that wouldn't necessarily be the best experience either. So we collaborate so that we get the best benefit for the companies.
Amazing. Claire, can you talk a little bit about the vision for Governor's Island and climate exchange?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think most fundamentally, and piggybacking a little bit on Andrew's answer about centers of innovation, there really is no replication and there's no substitute for being together in a cross-sector collaborative model. And hopefully folks who are here today experience that even now that we live in a more digital Zoom world. When we're talking about problems that are as thorny as the climate crisis, bringing together the right sectors together is a way to help speed innovation. So for us, our fundamental ideas and how we can have Governor's Island help this broader fight is, number one, to really create a cross-sector center of gravity. And a huge part of that I think does make it unique is that that's all happening in a place that is a public space. We get about 1 million visitors to the year to Governor's Island. We have an extraordinary, already resilient sort of campus environment, a thriving arts program that mostly focuses on issues of climate, great tenants like Billion Oyster Project and the Harbor School, which is a public high school focused on careers on the water. And out of that public space, we're able to grow this Center for Climate Solutions. So a couple of years ago, we ran a big international competition. The city offered $150 million to help support the winning project. And last April, we announced the winning team, the New York Climate Exchange. It's led by Stony Brook University, one of New York's, yeah, arms up in the air, I like that, flagship universities. It includes Duke University, Oxford, NYU, Pratt, Pace, but it also includes private sector partners like IBM, BCG, and nonprofit partners like Goals, workforce development organizations, environmental justice organizations. Together, they're going to build a campus that's focused on education, research. It'll have dorms and faculty housing and global convening. But that's not all we're doing on the island to make this sector work. We have the Harbor School, as we mentioned. We're building our first green and blue business hub with a team known as Buttermilk Labs, and all sorts of things going to make this cross-disciplinary sector. And then the other part of what we're working on, which is obviously the part of the piloting projects we're doing together, is the living labs on Governor's Island. So each year we run a challenge that has 2 pathways. At any time, a business who's looking for a place to try out their new technology, take it out of the lab and into the real world, can do that on Governor's Island. Like Lindsay said, it's a safe space to experiment. It's also one that I think at all 3 of our campuses has a fast track possibility, because as opposed to trying to try something in a New York City street, which has a lot of approvals to ensure safety, for our 3 campuses, it's kind of just us. And there's a little bit of work that needs to be done, but you don't need to wait 2 years on an alphabet soup of different agencies saying yes. And then also each year, in addition to the open call, we do a themed challenge. So this past year, we did it based on water. This year, we're about to launch it in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have a new theme that comes with grant support, where we'll actually select businesses to pilot on Governor's Island and to engage the public in education around those pilots.
So, and you alluded to this a little bit, but as we think about piloting as a motion, the ability to test technology in the real world and generate data to de-risk technology development, decision-making, whatever it is so powerful. The other thing that we see as far as barriers that startups face is demand. So the city is a very interesting demand partner in and of itself, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the challenge-based procurement work that's being done, but also industry is such a critical actor in all of this, to your point about cross-sector. So other than IBM and BCG you mentioned specifically, in this sort of collaborative concept, what is the role of, the city's investing $725 million to catalyze this network. What is the role of industry, and are there structural ways for them to engage in the programmatic work being done?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's room for everybody to play, from large-scale corporations like LG to the small AI startup that's focused on measuring water usage. The second example I just gave is a great example of where this is a small company that's been piloting at BAT, has done some stuff on Governor's Island, is now connected to the DOE, is testing their product in a couple of schools, met the mayor when we had our announcement about the Green Economy Action Plan. So it's really an all-of-government strategy now, and I think there's been a real breakthrough here from a procurement point of view with the city's Office of Procurement basically saying we can create these opportunities such that these smaller companies in particular do not have to go through endless procurement processes just to be able to pilot something. And it really goes to the nimbleness of the sites that we control, that we can get these things started early on and then introduce them to government agencies to help them grow over time. You guys should chime in.
If I would add, I think in terms of how how private companies can engage, and especially they think the extended network, when you think about people who are funders and capital providers, I think the companies sharing your information about a little bit about how your device or thing works. When we're asking those questions as administering the pilot, A, it's usually to facilitate the pilot, but B, it's part of what we are doing as members of the city family to educate our colleagues about what new technologies look like so they are more open to allowing them in the broader city environment. There's a very deep learning curve. You know, many of us have been in and out of the private sector, but a lot of people who work at other city agencies, they are career public servants, and so they don't have exposure to the same degree of innovation that we're talking about. And so, you know, if your job is to keep people safe or to educate children or do something else, your natural perspective is going to be risk averse, and so they're not going to use your IP to do anything. It is us asking for the purposes of education. So I think that's point one. And point two is use your access to other people of power to relay the same message that we are about. You have to be open to new technologies in order for us to allow them safely in our built environment and in you know, sacred places like our schools. We need to learn about them. Why we do the pilots is that we can all get smarter and the companies can build a better device. But people get tired of us knocking on the fire department's door saying we have to figure this battery fire thing out. The fire department's like, yes, but you know, they don't burn consistently, or you know, all these things. And how am I supposed to know when somebody's going to figure out a sodium battery? I just need it to behave a certain way. And we need other voices of power who have a different level of influence speaking to senior government officials who talk about the importance of innovation in achieving the goals. I'll add that.
One thing we've talked a lot about together is how can the whole be greater than the sum of its parts, and we have these three entities that are working together on the piloting. So one is, as Andrew was just illuminating, the idea that different pilots can go from site to site. So we have a company called Vicarb that's piloted on Governor's Island. I don't know if that's what you were referencing, Andrew, who did something at a sort of a scale of taking carbon dioxide, doing carbon capture at a scale of pounds. Now they're opening something at the Navy Yard in the scale of tons. And then It's Electric is a company that's launched, I think actually was incubated here, launched at BAD, and now is on Governor's Island at a larger scale. So there's a lot of great stories like that. But we're also in November going to be hosting our first event showcasing some of these pilot projects where we're inviting in investors, agency commissioners, and frankly, just buyers who can look at a set of technology that they know have been tested, have been vetted, that they can go and see in situ in a real world environment and ask themselves, is this something that I want to get behind? And having a collection of entities do that together just makes it, I think, a lot more appealing for people to be able to come and see a showcase like there is here today.
Yeah, no, go please.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on a couple of complementary programs because you know, you can do all the piloting in the world, but if these companies don't have access to dollars, it's very hard for them to scale and to be able to bridge those valleys in between procurements. And so I mentioned at the beginning the Founder Fellows program. We're really proud of this. There are over 300 participants, 75% of them BIPOC. These are entrepreneurs that, you know, apply to the program. They get help with technical assistance, with real estate, with financing over a year-long sort of assignment. And then when they step out, we help them find space, whether it's here or at BAT or Governor's Island or elsewhere in the city. And many of them actually come to us with the pilots that we've been talking about. Plus, we connect them through our venture access program with the extraordinary venture capital community in New York City. So we have over 100 VCs that have now signed on to not only diversify their staff, but focus on funds that have a diverse target in terms of entrepreneurs in the innovation space. And that group is only growing, so there's a real interest. And it's an interest not just because they want to do good from a social impact point of view, but because study shows if you're investing in diverse leadership, you're going to get higher returns. I mean, they are fully bought in on that. And then I'd say the third thing that we're excited about in this space is our Catalyst Fund, where we've taken $40 million and we're investing it with 10 to 15 different funds with 3 criteria. Are you focusing on New York? Are you focusing on diverse entrepreneurship? And are you focusing on our innovation sector, so life sciences, tech, or green economy, all to help plow money into this startup space, particularly at a time when it's been harder to get bank financing.
And those are all early stage vehicles for the most part?
Yeah.
Is there any contemplation to play in different asset classes or at later stages of growth as well?
Yeah, through the Catalyst Fund, they are reaching businesses that are at more, growth stage. And I think part of the vision for the Climate Innovation Hub, which will be about 100,000 square feet at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and we're putting $100 million behind, and have some just amazing coalitions of groups that we've just gotten applications on, but it is both incubation and acceleration, so both startup and growth stage, with wraparound workforce development services connected to it. So we're really excited. Like this, you could double the size of the Navy Yard today. You could build out the other 500,000 square feet at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. You could add 1 million square feet at Bush. You could build out the Climate Exchange, and I'm quite sure we still would not have enough space for the demand for small innovation companies in this city. I mean, 1 in 8 companies in New York City started in the last 12 months. That's an extraordinary stat. The vast majority of those have fewer than 10 employees. That is the heart of our economy.
That's amazing. So we've talked a lot about the power of the collaborative. Within that, though, just in terms of potentially founders in the room, are there, when you think about Governor's Island, specific natural environments, built environment, whatever it is, that you think from a differentiation standpoint, or the unique conditions that exist there, any specific technologies you're looking for? Question 1, and then part 2 of that question is, in addition to being a platform for others to pilot on, how are we thinking about these as platforms to advance the city's own climate goals? So I guess 2-part question is, from a call to action standpoint, who should be thinking about Governor's Island as a place to deploy? And then are you actually thinking about Governor's Island as an adopter and sort of owner of technology to advance your own targets?
Yeah, thanks. We, I think Lindsay highlighted the main thing, which is we have 172 acres on Governor's Island. Of that, about 120 is green open space with a fabulous park. There's 2.2 miles of waterfront. We have 1.5 million square feet of space under roof in historic buildings on the northern part of the island. So a huge part of our, we think, a value add is the ability to do testing in the water and to deal with, as we all know, one of the real threats that the city is facing, which is not just sea level rise, but also cloud burst and other type of water management issues. That's why we focused our first open call on that particular area. And it was interesting to see just the diversity of responses we got. We have a kelp farm going in off the shore of Governor's Island. We have a point of source gray water recycling technology that has great results and data so far. We have on-land wetland facilities that look to clean the East River. So that is certainly a point of strength for us in terms of what we can offer the innovation community. And then the other, which I think these folks probably share, is adaptive reuse opportunities. In some respects, new construction is easy, quote unquote. Nothing is easy, but you can do it right from the beginning. You can think about materials in a different way, and EDC's obviously done huge, extraordinary work through the Mass Timber Studio on this topic area. You can make sure it's all electric from the beginning. Taking old homes and office buildings and getting them up to today's standard is a more complicated problem. And that's obviously a huge focus of Local Law 97 and a bunch of other areas where we think there's rich opportunities. And part of what, sometimes having vacant buildings is not a great thing. And in this case, there's some advantage to that because we do have buildings where we're like, give it a try. The risk is so low. We don't have residents we're disrupting, or people whose day-to-day lives could be problematized by something that didn't work out the way we hoped.
Well, we are trying to decarbonize over people's heads, so we do have that problem. I mean, the buildings here date from the 1800s, and so we have, started to do the work to understand what decarbonizing those looks like. And there's not, we're just at the point where like our public housing authority, big kudos to them. They were really the leaders on challenge-based procurement. And, they're doing that with heat pumps. But, a heat pump works in an apartment. A heat pump does not work in this room, which is, and this is meant for an event, right? It's not where somebody's making something. And so we're trying to pilot that on a couple of our smaller buildings and take lessons from that and move it to the bigger buildings. And that's an opportunity for people. We happen to also have a power plant here at the Navy Yard that is both one of our energy providers and one of our tenants. And we're talking with them about what is the future of how you produce energy. Tell me about your pathway to hydrogen or something like that. Even if it's going to take a long time, let's talk about those milestones and let's talk about how to meet them together. And so those things are all very important, and you have to just constantly push. It can make people tired, and you learn to constructively fight. But that's part of what is getting the work done, and it's really important.
Yeah, I'll just highlight a couple other larger scale projects. I know the focus is mostly on startup growth stage companies, but they benefit from some of these larger projects moving forward. And so if you haven't seen, next time you're on the BQE, look over at the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, or you're flying into New York City, look down on it, literally millions of eyeballs every day on what is a 75-acre offshore wind port that is fully financed and in full-blown construction. There will be a staging area for the component parts, which will then float 15 to 30 miles offshore, go in 150 feet of water with turbines that are the length of a football field, with cables that connect them back into the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, into a substation that are going to power 500,000 homes. That's just the beginning of our offshore wind work, but there are enormous opportunities for MWBE contractors, for supply chain opportunities into that industry. We have real estate on the west shore of Staten Island, industrial dystopia there, scores of acres of land that is just screaming out for a manufacturing plant around offshore wind. We recently announced the largest EV charging facility in the city, and probably one of the largest in the country, near to JFK. We helped finance the largest solar project also at JFK. Up at Hunts Point, we're financing a new food produce facility building that'll take 1,000 trucks off of fossil fuel generators. Literally, these trucks have been idling on fossil fuels all day long for a generation. And you wonder why we have asthma problems in the South Bronx. So these are larger scale projects that will have a positive ripple effect on moving forward the whole green economy action plan and positively benefit a lot of these smaller companies along the way.
Amazing. Sorry, I'm out of time, I realize, but thank you so much, and congratulations on this incredible initiative.
Thank you.